but I
Oh, we're live. We're going live. Okay, here it goes. Got it. And we're streaming. All right. Meeting is now streaming on LiveTube. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Livzenastrology podcast. My name is Carmela Yvette. I'm the host of Livzenastrology, and I am so excited to have this beautiful guest, this beautiful tribe sister with us here today to share her energy, to share insights on healing and astrology. And I'm so excited to introduce you to Kristin Geeslin. Now, let me go ahead and give you a little bio of Miss Geeslin and what she does, what her energy is about. Oh, oh, let me put that on mute. Oh, oh no. All right, we got glitchy. Okay. Sorry, I was listening to myself on YouTube and it was weird. It was an echo. Okay, Moon's in Gemini today, so there's two energies happening. All right, so let me go continue on to introduce Miss Kristin to you. She is the Mindful Seer, as she is a lifelong meditation practitioner and student of higher consciousness. She combines 3 decades of public service experience in nonprofit organizations with 4 clear psychic guidance, theta healing, and mentoring for individuals, as well as empathy and creativity training and coaching for nonprofits and B corporations. Thank you so much, Kristin, for joining us here on the Livzenastrology podcast and for just sharing energy. And so, we had a little bit of a guidance today on what we wanted to speak on as far as, healing and astrology and how you use that in your practice. But before we go into that, I would just like to, get to know you a little better, for you to share exactly what you do in your healing practices before we get into how you use astrology. So how did you get into what you do now? Can you give us a little backstory on how you got started?
Sure. The part of the bio that I didn't send to you is the backstory, which is when I was little, a child, like 8 years old, someone asked me what I wanted to do when I was grown up. And I told them I wanted to be a psychic psychologist so that when I was grown up, I could help people, even if they had problems from past lives.
How old were you when you knew this? When you
8.
Wow.
Nine,
So
nine, maybe nine, I think it's 9. So for my whole life, I had this thing that I would be doing basically what I'm doing now. And I was, using like rocks to create a perimeter in my windowsills. And I wanted people to bring me rocks when they traveled. I was doing some behaviors that I now look back on and I think, okay, you brought something from a prior lifetime, because that is just not typical kid stuff. And even with regard to, my current Vajana Buddhism practice, when I was a little girl, a friend of my mother's gave me 3 pairs of boots, black, white, and red, like the old school 1970s go-go boots, which, who doesn't want to wear red go-go boots? Well, I absolutely flat out refused to wear the red boots, which led to conflict with my mom because I had worn out the black ones and the white ones, and she was on a budget. But in our practice in Vajrayana, unless you are a monk, you don't have maroon or red below the waist at all, and red shoes are out. And, looking back, I think, okay, I had that little bit of fragment from the prior lifetime about protocol, and there was just no way my mother was going to get me to wear those red boots. So I kind of was interested in metaphysics my whole life. From the time I was pretty young, there was a little track of metaphysics rolling along. When I was 12 is when I was introduced, 10, 12, introduced to astrology for the first time by a woman in my neighborhood who was a public school teacher and sort of befriended me. She was like an auntie to me. And so I started learning some general stuff about astrology at that time. and she introduced me to some other metaphysical ideas, numerology, and some other things. And it was just running, it was running along the whole way through, along with other crazy stuff that wasn't so healthy. But this track was definitely there. And then when I was like 10, I think I was 10 or so, my mom was taking me to yoga classes. So I was doing like Kundalini yoga with my mom. Then when I was 12, she took me to learn transcendental meditation. So, I had those things in there early. And then when things started to open up for me more intuitively, I was saved from I was saved by a dream when I was 15, from being raped. I had this terrible, scary dream, and I woke up from the dream drenched in sweat because I was fighting off someone who was trying to get me. And then a number of weeks later, being a foolish 15-year-old, I was sitting at a bus stop waiting for a public bus, and I took a ride with a stranger. Okay, well, nobody with any sense does that, but I did. I was naive 15. And I wanted to get where I was going. I was going to this mall. And as we started to go down US 19, which is, one of the main thoroughfares in Pinellas County, it clicked. Oh my gosh, we are heading in the direction of the place where this person was trying to hurt me. And he said, let's go. Would you like to? He asked me, do you want to go out to the beach, the causeway? And I was like, no, I don't want to. And yeah. And so I was able to get myself to safety. I said, no, I had the suede jacket that was my friend's. I'm like, no, my friend's going to meet me at 12:15. We have it all set up, so I went right into some dance kind of thing to get out of that car. And, by the grace of the universe, I got out. And, yeah. And so right away at 15, I was like, oh, intuition, this is a thing. This is a thing that matters.
Wow.
Yeah. So from then on, I was always keen to pay attention to intuitive stuff, whether it came in dreams or other ways. And so then I got interested in meditating more when I was around 20, and I was finishing college. I was praying a lot. Okay, universe, what do you want me to do with my life? And I had taken a course called the Psychology of Consciousness, where I did like a whole semester of meditation and journaling. And I think, my gifts opened up some then. And I had some mediumistic experiences at that time. But I was also being asked by my father and directed by him severely that you will get a 4-year degree, which I did complete. And, I didn't have like a thought in my mind that I would use these abilities to support myself. I was definitely, corralled into a conventional career track. And I did deviate in that I never was attracted to the corporate environments. There was something inside of me from early that was like, don't really trust everything they're up to. That inner voice was like, I don't know that I want to share my personal mojo in that zone, because I knew I had something. I didn't know what it was, but I didn't want it to be used for not nice things. So I just never quite went there. I always worked in nonprofits, human services, education, workforce development, until the 2009, 2010, I went through a dark night of the soul, and a lot of stressful things happened. And it was like the universe gave me the gifts. It's like opening, kind of turning off the left brain and opening to the universe more fully, is how I got through all these traumatic things that happened over an 18-month period. So at that time, I left that universe. I left the structured nonprofit universe and gradually segued into doing direct service with people, starting in 2016, doing professional intuitive guidance. And then since 2018, I've been strictly working one-on-one or with groups of people at parties or other venues, doing what I do.
That's incredible. Wow. If you've ever been drawn to write a book, I'd love to hear your story one day, to be so
I'm
in
so
tune.
drawn to write a book. I just need the time, space, and the discipline.
Yeah. Yeah. Because having been a child and sort of coming into this world, knowing your purpose, and then having, parental guidance to guide you to meditation, yoga so early on in life, I feel intuitively myself that you were very open. You were an open channel, and probably have a lot of protection around you because of that, because of all the just the intuition you brought into this realm for this time and space. I'm being guided to ask you now, with your practice since 2018, how has that unfolded for you? And what do you do in your practice now to combine those gifts to help your clients? And I guess going back to the point of this conversation, how do you utilize astrology into, helping your clients and with what they need, with what you offer in your services?
So my larger container that I see myself in is the realm of spirituality and science. Okay, that I am completely comfortable. I do not find them antagonistic in any way, and I fully embrace both approaches. Then I have kind of one leg in spirituality and psychic gift world and one leg in psychology. Okay, because I do have a degree in psychology. I did a lot of counseling and guidance. I have a lot of training, a lot of professional training in terms of how to help people. So then there's that. So what emerged right from the go-get in 2018 was people who were drawn to have consultations with me were intuitives. It was the other intuitive psychics and healers who started appearing. And so one of the things that is a big issue and challenge for newly emergent intuitive people and spiritually emergent people is sorting through various layers of energies. And I have found astrology to be a couple of things. First of all, astrology is both in the realm of psychology and spirituality. Okay. And there's some science there too. Okay. It's not a strict science, but still. Okay. So it floats into the domains which I, work in. And I myself, when I first had my personal spiritual opening, where more of these gifts were opening and all that, I had to learn to negotiate more, being more sensitive to the astrological energy frequencies. And I needed to be able to sort through, what is my personal experience and what is the experience of the collective. And I find that astrology is brilliant, absolutely brilliant for that. And we have a very self-help culture that often will personalize things. And that can be more detrimental. It can cause more stress and fear and worry and anxiety when we think it's about us. Oh, it's another issue. It's an issue I have. Okay. Instead of going, oh, there is a trend because of the astrology, or there is a trend right now energetically in the collective, or there's a sociological phenomenon going on. Okay, it could be at a gross energy level, it could be a big sociological trend, all the way down to something very subtle, like the little, what are those planet things that aren't even really planets in astrology?
Asteroids.
Yeah, those things, so it could be very subtle. It could be subtle, it could be far away, but somehow it's still affecting a person's psychology. So instead of I've worked with a couple people. I have a new person now, and I have one person in particular that I've spent a lot of time with, who had a spiritual emergence where she kept thinking, am I going crazy? Because her world experience changed so much. Now, luckily, she also is a big astrologer. Okay, so she was able, through the use of astrology, to ground in some ways. And she did a whole lot of other kinds of research. But I want people to understand, when their gifts are opening, that they are not going crazy. Okay. They are not losing their mind. They're just expanding into a larger realm of intelligences. And the astrology just seems a really, really useful tool, both for their personal emergence in terms of their life path and for their day-to-day mindfulness practices around not allowing external energies to penetrate into them more than they should be, but to also be aware of how to maximize the opportunities that are there based on what's going on astrologically.
That's a beautiful explanation. Thank you for that. And, I'm curious, when you begin working with the client, do you look at the astrology that's present, that's happening in that now moment, to help guide you, and to help to guide them? Do you tune into
I
that?
don't, because I'm not an astrologer. So I use other means. I have my Buddhism intuitive development and mindfulness method, which is my main diagnostic. So between my actually speaking to multiple thousands of individuals between the time I was 20 and now I'm 60, and my intuitive abilities, I can assess where they are really fast that way. And so that's how I do it. I will say I am surrounded by astrologers. Okay. They are all around me. I am in every group I'm in, and personal associations, they're everywhere. So I kind of get like a stream of information coming to me about the prevailing winds of what's happening in astrology, whether I'm seeking it or not, which I keep an eye on. Okay. I keep an ear on. I keep okay, that's going on. That's going on. So that when I'm sitting working with my client and I've done my diagnostics and they're kind of having a thing someplace, I can go, okay, yeah, but right now we've got this happening with the astrology, and or like in the case of the client that I referred to you last year, I was working with somebody who wanted to focus more on their intuitive development because they were about to have a baby. And so she wanted to, I think, have a little more sort of an interface between the world she was mostly familiar with, the research and hard science universe, and the woo. And with astrology, she could kind of get some of both. And she loved working with you. I think because not only do you do astrology, but you've also been to soul school. So the way that you, and that may be where we really interface in terms of the larger mission, is that we're both very transformative, okay, in the way we approach what we're offering. Okay, it's all about the opportunity for growth and development and creating more peace and happiness for ourselves and sharing that. So it's a different approach. It's not everybody does astrology that way. And I think my client really appreciated that transformative approach.
Oh, thank you for that. And I love that you touched on the different aspects of astrology and how to use astrology differently. There's so many different mechanisms and points of how to look at astrology, from shamanic astrology to evolutionary astrology, horary. I mean, it's infinite the way to use astrology. And it's all about intention, right? So what's your intention? How do you want to use it? What's your purpose? And so I want to touch back a little bit on what you're talking about, the beeism, because I'm curious about your beeism technique and how you actually assess a client's needs for what they're moving towards. What does that entail?
Right. So when I do the beeism, I call it a 5-frequency wellness check, essentially, a 5-frequency wellness assessment. So we're looking at sort of, what's happening with the body, the physical level, where the person lives, how their cash is flowing, and their physical body, physical. Then we start going up. It's not like directly aligned with the chakras, but it just kind of goes. Okay. So then we have the emotional realm, the intellectual realm, the soul journey, and then their relationship with their higher power. So when I lay out the cards, I can see, based kind of on what's going on there, what the prevailing winds are at this moment in time. And it's
I'm going to interrupt you for just a second. Which cards do you work with?
Okay,
what cards?
So the cards that I'm currently using, it's the baking bowl of belief. And I have them all in here. And I call it the baking bowl of belief because, as we know, everything that we're creating, that we have manifested, that we will manifest, it comes out of our belief systems. So I like to use these particular cards. I was drawn to them. I'm not one of these girls that has billions of decks. I just don't need that. I live in an 875-foot square cottage. I just don't need, 50 or 60 decks. Not that I wouldn't if they were gifted to me. Okay. But I use 3 primary decks. One is Voyager Tarot, which is this one here. Okay. This is the DNA. This is what DNA looks like. All life forms, plant, animal, and human, to the naked eye, this is what the DNA looks like. So I happened to choose, the Lover's card popped out, which is also decision making. All right. And choices. And so that's really what's going on right now with the collective, is how we're going to choose. Are we going to choose fear? Are we going to choose love? Based on all the turmoil and everything. And so to me, this is about what kind of choices we're going to make. So this is the Voyager Tarot, which was done by James Wanless in the 1980s. It was an updated deck. Okay, it's updated for the 21st century. No swords, no royalty. We have crystals, we have man, woman, and child. And it was the first deck to have melanated people in it, not just white people. Okay, so that was in the 80s. That was groundbreaking. Then we have James Wanless's other deck. Okay, this is sort of symbolic, and it is intellectual, but it's also metaphysical. All of the symbols are related, have metaphysical equivalents. Then there's this deck, which is a much more divine feminine deck. That's a kind of a masculine energy deck. This deck is the Sustain Yourself deck, which is based on the green studies from northern Spain. James Wanless studied with an older woman who was a green man wizardess. Okay, she had the green studies, and so then he created this deck. This deck is not as curated physically. Each one of those pieces in the Voyager deck was cut and placed. This is ripped. All the pieces in this are ripped. It's very organic. So I'm always interested to see, and I'm informed by which cards come out when I do the pull. Recently, I was working with somebody that was invoking the divine feminine, and every single one of the cards that came out of the bowl was this deck. Okay, so I can see a lot about what's going on based on what pops out. Then we have this little one, which is, I pulled this card right before we started. So this card says create and restore. Oh, isn't that what we're about? Creating and restoring. Those are totally watchwords for Carmela and Kristin. It's great. And it says produce, give birth, and then rest, which of course we know we have to rest between our creative activities. And this is the White Squirrel deck that James created recently. And I call this the Just Do It deck. It just tells you what to do. It's very concise. This does not come out of the bowl that often when I'm doing a Buddhism reading. And I feel it's because a lot of times we need more interpretation. But there are times when a person needs a direct, just do this. And they either need it because they just need to feel it, or it's time to, it's like you got to snap to it. So sometimes these little cards pop out. So that's currently my aspiration, is to have my own deck that will be curated and artistic and lovely with the Buddhism. So I'm working toward that. But in the meantime, the cards that I have here speak volumes to me. And usually within 15 minutes, I get a very clear picture of what's happening with someone. And they're pretty surprised, because they're not necessarily anticipating that.
I can so resonate with exactly what you just shared, especially about the symbology, because for me as an astrologer, it's all about the symbols. So when you're looking at an astrological chart, you're basically studying the symbols, because if you've ever looked at a birth chart, you're looking at the symbol for the sun, the moon, the Mercury. And like you said, there's infinite amount of symbols to look at between the asteroids and the fixed star points. And then you have to see how they're all aspecting each other, right? So that's a whole nother configuration. And there's terabytes of information to be gleaned just by one symbol. So I really can see why astrology for you resonates so deeply, especially since you work with the medicine of symbology in your own practice through the cards, because that's what astrology also is a big proponent of, is all about the symbolism. And once you anchor in those symbols and really anchor in what the meaning of the symbols are, then you just get your own, to me, it activates your own gnosis, your own inner gnosis within as to what's happening. And for those of us, some astrologers may not agree with me, but I would like to get us to a point where we use the tool of astrology to where we don't need it anymore. Because it's just a tool. It's like once you use the tool to build the house, once it's built, maybe just for the upgrades or to make repairs, but for the most part, and that's how I see a lot of this, because all is self. we already know these things. We talk about the field of energy that surround us. A lot of us have designated that as the Akashic field of energy, right? Anything that's happened, that is happening, that will happen is available to us in this now moment if we're present for us, if we know how to interpret the meanings, the symbols that show up for us, whether it's through I think it's interesting you brought the squirrel, because when I go out in nature and I meditate, I love to meditate in nature. A certain animal will show up for me, right? And they call that shamanism, where animal spirits or animal totems have messages for you, right? So it's about receiving the symbol that shows up for you, whether you're doing the cards, whether you're doing the astrology, whether you're out in nature, and then the symbol that shows up, and then how to interpret the symbol, right, is so important. And I love that you tied into what you believe will be true for you in that symbol. Let's go a little dive into that, because I wanted to also share with you that you pulled the Lovers card. In astrology, the Lovers represents Gemini,
Oh, right.
which
And it's
is,
Gemini. That's right.
and the moon's in Gemini right now. So I think, see, there's that correspondence there, that all you have to do is just tune in to the frequency, and it's so clear, right? But it's tuning into that frequency. And we all have our point of the fractal that we speak on. And as long as we show up our authentic selves and just share what we know from your own point of the fractal, then there's a coherence that's available to us.
Right. I
From
love that. I love that you're referring to the fractal, because my vision of organic reality is sort of like a three-dimensional mandala-like fractal. And what also is resonating about what you just talked about is the thing about these are tools. Okay. Cards are tools. What I've enjoyed about the Voyager Tarot is it's coming out again. It just keeps coming out again and again. Is that it allowed my clairs to open. Okay. It opened up my clairs. It was like a yoga workout for all my clairs. And so
Wait, can you go back and explain for anybody that's watching, what do you mean when you say clairs? What does that mean?
Okay, so clairs are sort of like your spidey senses. Okay, so we have these regular senses, but when they go to the spidey sense level, when they start tapping into the Akashic record, into the collective, into the matrix, now that's a clear. And it's clear, it's sort of like clear. Okay, it's like a clear hearing, a clear seeing, a clear tasting, okay, a clear sensing, a clear knowing. So apparently the big one for me all my life was claircognizance. And that's how I kind of knew what was up with all the stuff that was going on, and then the other clairs came after that.
Claircognizance is clear thinking?
When you just know stuff. Okay, like in the Voyager Tarot, there's a card with Einstein on it. And Einstein just knew a bunch of stuff. Okay, I believe he was claircognizant. Okay, he was sensing into all that can be known place and bringing that forward. And he was very sensitive emotionally. And he spoke about, there's a letter to his daughter where he talks about the interplay between quantum physics and love. And he says, the masses aren't ready for this message yet, but as the time goes by, the science is going to help them understand the value of, the heart synchronicity. He knew it. He knew what was going on. So that was, I believe he was claircognizant. And James Wanless chose to put him on the knower card. Now, although the Voyager Tarot is a tarot deck, it follows the traditional tarot format. I am not a tarotist. I never studied tarot. I can look at tarot cards. I can work with the higher arcana, but I am directly reading these things intuitively. And that worked for me from day one. That when I said, I can't get a job doing what I used to do, and it was time to segue into this other world, the universe said, okay, here, honey, here's your tool. And that's what it was. And that was where the doors started opening to a different kind of work outside of that other universe that I had been in for decades.
Wow.
And the other thing is there was a bird. Okay, so the point here is the symbols for you also, that you are highly intuitive. Okay, you're highly sensitive to what's going on in the Akashic record. Okay, and the astrology was like your yoga workout to get that.
You know, it's so funny because I was just going to say, as you're talking about the symbology and the spidey senses, the clairs, well, Jupiter right now, which is our planet of expansion, is in Taurus, which Taurus is about all the senses, right? Well, we could taste, touch, feel, sense, smell, all of that. So Jupiter expansion is expanding that energy within. And so maybe right now as a collective energy, anybody that's watching this, that's it's a vibrational match to this podcast might be experiencing that as well, where all of a sudden there's an expansion in your spidey senses. So you're right. You're not going crazy. You're just being expanded. Your senses are expanding beyond what they used to be able to tap into because the frequency, the energy has shifted now. So this is also a point too, that if you're starting to feel these superpowers coming on for you, and I do call them powerful because they're beyond what we've been familiar with, then it's good to talk to your local healer or metaphysician that maybe that will not judge you for these things, that will be like, oh no, that's perfectly normal. You know, this is, and by the way, this is how to work with this energy. So is there any recommendations for anybody watching here whose spidey senses, whose superpowers might be ignited at this time with Jupiter expanding in Taurus? What can people start utilizing and working with? What tools do you recommend that have helped you along your journey to stay
Well,
grounded while also expanding?
well, meditation is your, that's your go-to. Meditating, and for me, once your spidey senses start to open, your body sort of becomes like your radar. Okay. And so you need to keep your radar organized so that when it gets these, impulses coming in, that it's easier to interpret them in a good way. Okay, that they are not overloading you, that they're not distracting you, that, so if your body is clean, if you're relatively healthy, if you're well rested and all that, then there's less chance that these extrasensory things are going to be misinterpreted or cause trouble. And so that's becomes a big deal. Both Carmela and I spent time this morning, invested time this morning. There's like a sunbeam coming through as I'm saying this stuff. It's like right here on the third eye.
I see it.
Third eye sunbeam is coming in. Like, okay. So this becomes like your instrument for instead of everything being siphoned through the intellect. Okay, basically in capitalist reality and how most of us have been raised, all the information gets siphoned through the intellect, and that is a very small siphon. And in like the coaching that I do with people who are emergent, I am encouraging them to allow all of their senses and their instinct. Okay, because you've got your clairs are at one level and your instinct is someplace else. Your instinct is like in your gut. And a lot of people who don't necessarily have open clairs will still get gut instincts. Okay, so your gut talks to you, your clairs talk to you, and your heart speaks to you, your emotional reality speaks to you. So these are different important intelligences. And once we get all of the whole story from using all the intelligences, then we can say, okay, intellect, I know what's up now. Here, would you please make a plan to execute the thing that I now, or to create the thing, I shouldn't say that word, to create the thing that is desirable. But if you just let your intellect be in charge, it's a tiny little box that doesn't have as much information. And then you can't make the same, moves in life.
What's the image is coming up? It's like if you're only using the intellect, you're only using one sense.
Exactly. It's so silly, but we're trained. Okay, we're trained to worship the intellect because that's just how our culture rolls. And so we have to untrain that. Because also, like an overactive intellect is also what generates fear, worry, and anxiety.
What type of meditation practice do you work with?
I am a long-term practitioner of a wisdom tradition called Vajana Buddhism, which is very ancient. So that's like the Dalai Lama. When you see the Dalai Lama with his mala and his maroon robe, that's the same basic wheelhouse. And it's prominent in Tibet, in India, Bhutan, that zone. Sometimes you hear it referred to as Tibetan Buddhism, but it's more proper to say Vajrayana because it's not just located in Tibet. And once the Chinese invaded Tibet, Tibetans were scattered all over the whole world. So the exact opposite, if the Chinese had hoped to crush the culture, now the Vajrayana practice has been spread globally. And there are Vajrayana practitioners now all over the world for, a few decades, since the 1950s. So it's pretty established in many places. It's a very old tradition, and it's done in a very specific way. The Vajrayana practices, the intention of Vajrayana is it's sort of like the rocket ship to realization. So if you think about, if you're in a rocket ship, you definitely don't want it to be going off course. So you are working closely with a teacher who helps keep you on course, and practices that keep you on course. And frankly, I believe that my years doing these type of visualizations is what allowed me to process what the other people were telling me, the healers and seers that came to me and said, oh my gosh, there's all this chatter. I can't, there's, 50 guides are talking to me at the same time. It's a disaster. I just automatically, like with my clear cognizance and my understanding of energy, could say, okay, well, let's just treat that like you were at a party. You can't be in like all these different conversations and really attend. You would say, nice chatting with you, group, and then walk over here and chat with this other group, but you get to choose who's talking and how much you're listening. That's not outside of you. And honestly, when I was a girl, okay, this is going to sound really out there, but I know that a lot of people are more aware of AI now, or not AI, but what do they call them now? Not extraterrestrials. Okay, we used to call them aliens. I don't know what the right word is right now. But when I was a little girl, one time I really did feel like some ETs were trying to communicate with me. And I was just like, I'm not having it. I don't like your vibration. Get out. You cannot take up space in my psychic area. I don't know, no more than 12, but I was very sure that their energetic frequency was not for me. It was just not resonating. So
that's not the party you wanted to go to.
No, it wasn't a party for me at all. And I was very clear on that. And, it never, I never really talked to people about that. But then later, people started talking about communicating mediums. A lot of mediums, have had communications, and there's different ones apparently. And some are more into like trying to empower us with science, and some are nicer than others. And so whichever ones were trying to get into my energy field were not for me. So, there were some, that was pretty wild, but what does this have to do with Vajrayana? I think that I was able to, either what I came here with, maybe from prior lifetimes, plus the Vajrayana practice has made it easier for me than a lot of people that I have seen and known to have open clairs and not have a lot of extra distorted noise communication from disembodied energies, from ABC 1, 2, 3. Because of that very focused mindfulness practice around, we are generating bodhicitta, we are trying to apply skillful means, we have a very sort of clear mission-based thing. So then as long as I stay on mission, like you did with your self-care practices this morning, then I am not affected by various ABC 1, 2, 3 energies around me. When I don't, I'm not as committed to the practices, then my own personal psychology, the trends of the collective, and whatever is going on energetically is going to be more oppressive, and then I have less ability to be skillful and so forth. So for those of us who are helper healer types, these self-care practices become sacrosanct. They just become non-negotiable. And I feel right now, because of those words that have been coming to me about, I've been saying peace and happy for years as a greeting, because my teacher said that, peace and happy, and we say it at the end of prayer sometimes. But I'm also now feeling conscious action. conscious action is what's coming through. And even in our practices, we have something, I think it's Tepa, or it's Sepa, it's kind of like a TS and Shashan. So there's being aware of what's correct and then taking the correct action. So you get the awareness and then act correctly. That's more what's coming to me now, is this is a time for really correct action.
I love that. And I love that you said too, that you shared your particular meditation practices. And just to know anybody watching the channel, there's not one way to meditate. There are so many different mechanisms and way to settle the mind. Like right now, you said you started with TM early on. I'm just now getting into transcendental meditation. And that was part of my practice this morning, is 20 minutes of using my mantra and I love that active consciousness, because this is the time right now, especially since the North Node in astrology. North Node is what we've all come to learn as a collective. In Aries, which is about something new, taking action, right? It's our primordial life force energy, and taking life force action on things that make us feel good, that bring us into that heart of the child, if you will, that space of curiosity rather than fear. So that all these new spidey senses that want to come on, that want to be activated, that they have some coherence to them. They have some understanding. It doesn't feel so overwhelming, because Jupiter, when it expands something, it can get it really, 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 really big. And it gets it really big, really fast, and you're not grounded in some sort of action, conscious action daily. And right now, Venus, which is our love and money planet, is in Virgo. So Virgo, I know you're Virgo. And so it's all about the daily practice, right? Being of service, first of all, in Aries with North Node, to self, making sure that your body, your mind, your heart, your environment is clear, it feels good. And then being able to give to service to the other, right? To show up coherently for the other. So it's definitely a dance. It's definitely a practice. It's a consciousness that every day it's not the perfect. Well, who did I hear this right? Because I'm a recovering perfectionist. It's not about being perfect. It's about having the perfect practice. And so as long as you're practicing these things, you're okay. You're in alignment. You're exactly where you need to be. And you'll feel the difference. I think also having the contrast of falling away from your practices to feel the difference, right? Because we're living in this duality plane of existence right now. So I think it's good to play with those poles too, to know, this is what it feels like when I don't have these practices, when I don't do the sacred inner work every day. I'm out of balance. I'm thrown off. I'm, picking up on, and another thing when it was brought in, it's like a radio station. So when these entities, these beings outside of you try to tap in, because your light is really bright, right? It's like a moth to a flame. You don't have to turn into that radio station. You don't have to turn into that channel of the ETs. Or for me, it was always like ghost energy, people that have transitioned, that I'm like, no, 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 I don't want you in my field. And I would always feel the tap, and I'm like, no, you guys scare me too much. I don't want to. No, that's a no. It's a clear no. So being able to just turn off that radio station, if you will, that's I feel also is part of the sacred practice of being able to know what you want to tune into consciously daily. And that's a great practice to start embodying, for sure.
Yeah, because it's really that thing about, what you focus on expands thing too. So it's like, of course, you want to keep your focus in the place of what you'd like to see expand, as best possible.
Yes. And it's a practice, because right now with technology, while it's fantastic and it expedites things and speeds things up, it also creates distraction energy. So there's always a positive and a negative consequence as we are expanding forward. And just to be aware of it, again, no judgment with it, but just be aware, like, hey, I might need to take a technology break. I need to go out in nature. I need to ground. I need to breathe. I need to tap. I need to whatever it is to get you back to 0 point, which is presence. Again, it's a practice.
Yeah, the nature thing is big. Like, I'm glad, when you say the word ground, go walk on the ground. It doesn't have to be complicated. Like, take your shoes off and walk on the earth. And that is grounding. And sometimes I like to just go out and like take a little trip around my yard, like visit my plants, say hi to the plants, just walk around the yard, like especially if I've been on for a long time. And I have really been called to spend more time in nature. And this year, when I was able to go to Mexico and I was outside in the afternoon, like in a cenote or someplace, I noticed that my energy was better when I was outside than when I'm in my house at that same time of day. So obviously I was able to replenish my, cellular energy better outside than when I'm inside. So I thought that I made note of that because I was like, whoa, that's really noticeable. But I'm out running around during the time of day that I'm usually like want to take a nap, and I don't feel depleted. So I was like, okay, I need to pay attention to that little information.
Is there anything that you would like to leave the listeners with today, as far as if the spidey senses are coming on, you're really starting to get activated, you're really starting to feel a call for something different in your life? What can you do, say, think? What would you like to leave us with? A piece of advice today?
I would say, like, trust the process. Okay. It's not going to get clear overnight. And yes, there may be some bumps in it, but I do believe that it's part of the equalizing and the healing of the planet, that so many individuals, particularly women, are opening up with their gifts. And you're not alone. I absolutely assure you that there are many others. And it's like, as you start to speak your truth about your own internal experience with the intuition opening, you will gravitate to others and others will gravitate to you, and you absolutely will not feel lonely. Yes, you may have to walk away from some groups of people and situations because their energetic vibration, it will no longer align with you. And that's just that's just how it goes. And those can be some bumpy times when you realize there's places that you enjoyed formerly or groups of people you like to be with, and now you're just like, oh no, I can't even handle this. It's because you're at a different vibrational frequency now, and you just have to find the other like-minded people, and you'll be fine. But it's not, doesn't happen overnight.
That's a great piece of advice. Thank you for that. And for our listeners that are listening, how can they find you if they're coming online and they want a coaching session or a session with you? How can they find you?
Sure. And the easy way is to go into the Google bar or into the Facebook bar and put the Mindful Seer. I don't have a website yet. I will very soon, but mostly I interface with clients either directly with my phone number, which is available online widely. You can Google the Mindful Seer, and other things I've done will pop up, in the little thing. And so Facebook Mindful Seer is the easiest way to find me and message me. Also, my email address is on the screen, Kristin Geeslin 2 at gmail.com. And my phone number is 727-678-3761. And I wanted to make an offer for people who see this. I'm willing to offer what I do at intuitive fairs for anyone who sees this video, which is a very short sort of little, snap, bite-sized snap of what I do, either 15 minutes or a 20-minute or a 30-minute, time. I normally work with people over multiple sessions, but the 30 minutes is, or the 15 minutes is $35. The 20 minutes is $45, and the 30 minutes is $65. So I just wanted to make that offer because I'm trying really hard to keep the entry point for people who are in this awakening transition affordable. A lot of times people are at this point are leaving a job that they've been in for a long time, and they're not even sure what's coming in terms of their economic reality. So I'm here to help you through that phase and try to give you what I can as economically as possible, because I believe in the shift. I'm in the mission of the shift to get our planet back into a divine feminine, divine masculine balance that is sustainable.
That's beautiful. And I'll also put her information on the links below when you watch this channel. And thank you again so much for being here, for sharing your energy, for sharing your insights on how you use astrology and just how you do your practices. I think that anybody who's watching this can really appreciate that you're not alone, that this is a process of humanity as a part of our evolution. And I just want to thank you for being on this channel, for tuning in, for connecting with the channel. And thank you so much, Kristin, for sharing your energy.
And
Many
Carmela,
blessings to you.
blessings, many, many blessings to you. I'm so excited to see what you're doing. And you know, I know there's so much exciting stuff on its way to you, and you're going to be having so many opportunities to be able to share your light with others in meaningful ways, for appropriate compensation, I'm sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this time and energy. And thank you, everybody, for watching. Many blessings to you. And be well, okay? Bye.
Happy.
Be happy.